Okay.
So
I'd like to wait.
Go ahead,
if you don't mind, Jordan.
John,
I'd like to take what Steve just said, which is so sensible. It makes perfect sense. Yes, we need a liberal democracy for all these reasons. But yet somehow it doesn't seem to inspire people the way that a God does. And yes, we could elevate human well-being. Let's all have a religion around human well-being, and we'll do whatever it takes to advance human well-being. Well, I get invited to speak at Christian colleges and Christian associations and podcasts sometimes because even though I'm a center-left atheist Jew, when they read The Righteous Mind, they find it useful and they see that I don't have the usual academic contempt for religion. I actually think religion, at least in the United States, religion on net is a very good thing. And so when I speak to Christian audiences, I often start off by saying, we actually agree on something extremely important, which is that there is a God-shaped hole in everyone's heart. And Pascal didn't say exactly that, but he said something more or less to that effect. And I say, yeah, there is a God-shaped hole in our heart. We just disagree on how it got there. And you think it's there because we long for God and God exists and God fills it. I think I'm a naturalist. I think we evolved to be religious. And I tell that story in The Righteous Mind, how we evolved for sacredness and gods and how gods have evolved culturally. And so I think central to our conversation here, or rather we're having this academic conversation in the context of a country going insane with bad religions. And by bad religions, what I mean is people have found something that fits the hole. And so it's deeply satisfying, but it makes them behave in ways that are incredibly destructive to a liberal democracy. Whereas the older religions at least went through a process of evolution, especially those that made it in a free country like America. They tend to be kind of nice. And so I would bring that perspective.
Okay, so I want to comment on that a bit. I mean, one of the things I've been struck by talking to Lomberg and Ridley and Marian Tupy about the idea of human well-being, which is obviously something that anyone sensible would support, is that it is very, very difficult to make it inspiring. And I think there are probably two reasons for that. One is this God-shaped hole that John was talking about seems to perhaps indicates that that ideal that you mentioned, Stephen, needs to be embodied in something like a personality for it to fit properly, rather than for it to be an abstract idea that might be more motivating for people who are highly rational and intellectual. And so it isn't obvious to me how an ideal of, say, incremental progress towards well-being, which might be regarded as a prime Enlightenment sentiment, can be fashioned in some sense so that it fulfills the psychological requirements that Jonathan was describing.
Yeah, so I have another, if I can allude to another cheeky passage toward the end of Enlightenment now, I say, well, do we need to have men in colored shirts saluting posters of John Stuart Mill and secular humanist preachers rolling back their eyes and pounding a copy of Spinoza's Ethics on the pulpit?
Hear, hear.
So, well, maybe we do.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, and I find there's some irony in here, me defending the plasticity of human belief and values, given I'm a pretty staunch advocate of the concept of human nature. But what fills that God-shaped hole is it's pretty variable. I mean, it was certainly, there's nothing in human nature that says that it had to be filled with the notion that if you accept that a guy who was nailed to a cross 2,000 years ago died for your sins, and the foremost of which was when Adam and Eve ate from the fruit of the fruit of the tree of knowledge. I mean, that's not an intuitive idea. That was an idea that we had to have acquired. We also know that despite the prevalence of religious belief, there's an awful lot of the world's population that does not believe in any deity. The population of China, for example, a large proportion of the population of Western Europe. In the United States, millennials and Gen Zs have some vague notion of spiritual but not religious, but they're falling in droves away from specific
from formal religions, but that makes them more vulnerable to these new political religions.
Well, indeed, no, I agree. But the thing is that those aren't specifically, they're not literally religious in the sense that they appeal to the supernatural or theological. They're crummy moral systems, and so it does leave open the possibility of having a not so crummy moral system.
Okay,
namely,
But the essential element, I think, is that it unites a group against other groups.
Yeah.
So human well-being wouldn't do it, but fighting white supremacy or fighting CRT or the communists or the fascists or whatever. So I think you can't just put anything in there. I'm a Durkheimian, and so I think a good religion, anything that's going to fit in the whole, and by good, I don't mean good for society, I just mean something that'll make a good fit, is going to have to be one that has a group bonding function for us to come together to fight something else.
So let